Good morning, everyone. Maybe I can add one more greeting from the East. Habari zenu, that's Swahili for good morning. Habari za asubuhi. It's great to be here to talk about a very important topic, regulation. So maybe before I call the colleagues on the panel, I'll make a few remarks. So if we look at the global digital landscape today, it's clear that AI and digital platforms have pushed infrastructure to the front page of the news. All of us today here have, in one way or another, are using a coding assisted tools, which make our lives easier and make it more efficient. So compute scaling, network fabrics, subsea systems, satellite backbones, data centers are no longer hidden enablers. They are the very differentiating factors of economic competitiveness. The new sexy words are open access, programmable infrastructure, GPU clusters, communications library stacks, reasoning models, and AI workloads. The scale of this infrastructure is staggering. Some of the colleagues in this room today are pushing now data centers in the size of gigawatt. I think the last one that was announced by Meta is going to be 2,250 acres. That's literally the size of Eco Atlantic for one campus. So it's no longer, infrastructure is now the new frontliner and the differentiator between the now and the future. The Two Africa system is nearly 45,000 kilometers and is now the longest cable. And there's more coming. Satellite backbones are also forming the basis for transformation with LEO and GEO satellites. The equipment side is also not left out. I think the equipment manufacturers in the room today are investing in more and more on programmable optics, disaggregated hardware, and more innovation on chips and pluggables, which I'm sure we'll talk about as well within this week. But the challenge now is this level of scale is nothing without the right regulation. Every one of these projects, such as the subsea cables, the cross-border fibers, etc., depend on solid licensing frameworks around spectrum allocation, permitting, which is a big barrier so far in some of the countries, cross-border harmonization, and reducing the red tape between deployment of infrastructure and completion. And more importantly, protection of this critical infrastructure. 98% of the internet as we know it today still goes through submarine cables and fiber. And that means a lot in terms of the effort that we should make to protect this infrastructure. So the stakes are high, and there's no better opportunity to talk about it today. So I'm going to call on stage my colleagues. There's Raymond from Ghana, representing the NCA. Round of applause. I'll also call on stage Babagana, representing the NCC. Round of applause. Representing Kenya is Dr. Fiona Asonga. And to keep the panel even more interesting, we've found it wise to also add Cedrick from AFRINIC. So welcome everyone. I'll give the panelists a chance to give a brief introduction, and then we'll go from there.
So my name is Raymond, Engineer Bill, from the NCA of Ghana, National Communications Authority. I'm the acting director of IT. I send my greetings to all the participants and the organizers of this fine program.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Engineer Babagana Digima. I'm the head New Media and Information Security Department of the Nigerian Communications Commission. Thank you.
Morning, everybody. I'm Dr. Fiona Asonga, Chief Executive Officer of the Technology Service Providers Association of Kenya. It is not a regulatory body per se, though there's a level to which our national regulator has allowed us to self-regulate on the infrastructure side of things. We are a private sector industry association. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Cedrick Mbeyet, Stakeholder Development Manager at AFRINIC, the Regional Internet Registry for Africa and Indian Ocean, and happy to be on this panel.
Great, welcome everyone. So just to kickstart the conversation, naturally, technology always precedes regulation. There's a big push to now move away from policing to supervision. And that's a big statement from the nature, globally, how the regulation is moving is towards supervision. So maybe to start the conversation, we can have a look at an assessment of what each of our countries are doing in terms of current regulation and protection of digital infrastructure. So maybe we can start with you, Raymond. How can you describe the state of digital infrastructure in your country? Ghana is a critical hub in the West Coast and a regional hub for Africa.
Well, I would say that Ghana has come a long way in making sure that there is the right infrastructure for development of digital innovation. Through the national backbone infrastructure, we've been able to run fiber to all the 16 regions of the country in order to also take care of the unserved and underserved areas. There is a special fund that was created to make sure that we can invest in that area. That is GIFEC, Ghana Investment Fund for Electronic Communication. And the mobile companies are to contribute 1% before tax of their profits into that fund. They are part of the board, so they are able to also dictate where the fund is invested, specifically in underserved and unserved areas. Then recently, government has also invested in the smart workplace, an attempt to bring the use of digital tools closer within the ministries and their other associated organizations. So the policy direction has been specifically universal access, affordability, infrastructure resilience, and digital inclusion. So I want to mention specific areas, certain specific areas. So if you come to fiber infrastructure, to date we have about 34,500 kilometers of fiber across all the 16 regions in the country. Notable among them is the 1,100 kilometers that is linking the south to the north through the eastern corridor, connecting what we call the MMDAs, Metropolitan, Municipal, and District Assemblies, to bring technology closer to the seat of local government across the region. Also, in the area of submarine cable, we have 4 cables actively working today. We have the WIOCC cable, the SAT3, we have the Mbeyet 1, and we have the ACE. We hope that 2 Africa will be lighted by the close of the year. And we can talk about data center. We have the MDXI, now Equinox. We have the Digital Realty Data Center also in the country. And then for internet exchanges, we have two. The Ghana Internet Exchange. Currently, we would say it's been underutilized. Then we have the Pan-African Internet Exchange, which is a new one. That yesterday I was talking to one of the officials. They are able to assist ISPs from landlocked countries in the northern part of the country to pick up traffic from their data center and their internet exchange. We have made some gains in the broadband and mobile network area. Yesterday in the presentation, it was said that Ghana has the highest penetration of mobile data in West Africa. And that is true. We have over 70% penetration, 95% coverage nationwide. And these are some of the areas we have chalked successes in the last decade of regulating the industry in Ghana.
Thank you. I think that's good progress. Ghana has always been on the front line in progression in terms of digital penetration. But maybe back home, Babagana, what is the NCC's view of the current digital infrastructure framework, and what are we doing as a country and as the regulator to enhance the growth of digital infrastructure?
I'm sorry, can you come back again? The echo is making me...
So in the same line of thought as the presenter from Ghana, what are the current steps that we are taking as the NCC to enhance digital infrastructure in Nigeria?
Well, at the NCC, thank you very much. At the NCC, there are several activities that we're undertaking at the moment to enhance the infrastructure, the services, and so on across Nigeria. And not only Nigeria, of course, but it also affects other parts of Africa. But amongst them, chiefly, we look at what we have as plans for policy, for example, the broadband plan, and the targets that are set in those. We try to achieve those, especially regarding the fiber reach to homes, to offices, and so on. As you are aware, we have the Honorable Minister's Project Bridge, which is whose aim is, of course, to roll out 90,000 kilometers of fiber. And this will be done in rings across the 6 regions or 6 geopolitical regions of Nigeria. So that is one major driver that the Commission is fully supporting as well. And then we have, of course, other undertakings. For example, in terms of licensing, we just released a licensing framework that is addressing new technologies, that is also providing for newer things that we have not seen. For instance, we looked at issues around POCs, sandboxes, and so on. So that is in itself is a driver for new entrants, for people who are innovative, and also even for existing players to see that, yes, we have pushed in a direction that helps improve both connectivity, infrastructure, and so on. So that notwithstanding, we also have our tariff reviews, consumer protection efforts, and so on. Recently, the government approved a tariff increase, which we're already seeing the impacts in the commitments from operators up to $500 million, and we are expecting another $500 million from others as well. So those are all efforts that the Commission is making to try and push towards that effort. Thank you.
That's interesting. Maybe from a private sector perspective, Fiona, are you feeling these gains in Kenya? There's a lot of investment going into Kenya, and overall, the impact has to be felt by the private sector. Is this the case?
I'd say quickly, yes, but I'll explain. The Kenyan government, the new government came in 2022 with an agenda to build and to fast track a digital superhighway. And with this digital superhighway, there are several factors that the government is focusing on. For starters, the whole digital superhighway program is driven by the Ministry of Investment and Trade. So the Ministry of ICT then comes in to facilitate as a facilitator and enabler of the overall agenda of the Ministry of Trade. With the Ministry of Trade, they're looking at being able to ensure that the digital superhighway benefits 4 main pillars, and that is health, agriculture, finance, services, and medium and small enterprises. And so with that in mind, then the rollout and targets are set by the Ministry of ICT to make sure that there are a minimum 100,000 additional kilometers of fiber. There are 150 ICT hubs across the country. And then there are TVETs that become centers of excellence that are built and being developed under KONZA. There is issues around developing of the KONZA Technopolis so that then it becomes more established as a digital center of excellence. There is a focus on universal access and making sure that universal service fund is well distributed, utilized. There has been a change in the rollout of that to ensure that the Kenya Power and Lighting that already is doing the power also facilitates the rollout of ICT infrastructure. And with all these, there has been, to a certain level, benefits to the private sector, because government does not do this by themselves. They must contract private sector. There's different tenders being issued to enable private sector to then do the rollout. Even Kenya Power and Lighting is not doing all of them themselves. They have to make sure that they work with private sector at some point to ensure the distribution of the fiber, that the backbone, access to the backbone that they develop. And this, yes, is being felt by the private sector. And at the end of it all, there is a concerted effort by the government to try and reduce the cost of calls and data by allowing the public, especially the youth, to use the different platforms to be able to gain employment, because employment is an issue within the Kenyan ecosystem. And so this is one in which they are seeing the employment being improved at the county level. And within the local government, we've seen several local governments coming up and taking on the use of the digital superhighway. We are seeing more local authorities digitizing, for starters, their health platforms, then their agricultural spaces, so that it's easy to know, for a farmer to know where to market, what to produce, and pricing and all these issues. So there are digital agricultural platforms being set up at the local county government levels that are benefiting not just the ICT investor, but now the SMEs within the respective local governments. There is also a lot of effort being put into the digitizing of the local government county services, so to say. As of last week, there was a report of more than 22,000 services already offered online on the Huduma platform, as we call it, where you get government services as a citizen. So then these are services of both the national government and the county governments, and more counties are still bringing on more of their services online.
That's interesting. So there's a significant investment, both from government and collaboration from the private sector.
Yes.
So Cedrick, supervision or policy, as you can tell, there's a lot of effort from the regulators, there's collaboration from the private sector. But what are the sort of challenges in deployment of this infrastructure, as you can tell from your experience across Africa?
That's actually a very interesting question, because Today, when it comes to Africa as a whole, for me, it's always 54 countries, 54 challenges. And that's actually it's the beauty of Africa, but it's also our biggest challenge, because sometimes what you will see in one country may not be replicable in another country. It's true that we have continental initiative, like some are by African Union or African Telecom Union, etc. But there is so much disparity in not only in countries but also in regions, because you will see, like yesterday we spoke about West versus East, and you can see that there is a lot of things happening in West Africa, there's a lot of things happening in East Africa, but what about Central Africa? Sometimes you can see that some countries or some region are moving very fast, some will be moving slow, and some will stay still, which is not easy at all. And well, the perception will be different, because sometimes some will say, oh, we are moving. But when you look at them, you see that they are not really going anywhere. And there is a lot of progress that have been made at the continental level today, and we have to acknowledge that, because when you look at the state of Africa, or let's say most of the African government or regulator 10 years ago or 15 years ago, most of them were most interested in telecom and not really looking at everything internet, digital infrastructure. They were very focused on telecom because Thank you. I think I have some enemies in this room. Thank you. So I was saying that when you look at the regulators, they were doing actually an amazing job, but they were only focused on telecoms because that was the initial mandate, look after telecoms. But now that we have added, they've received that mandate to also look at electronic communication, at digital infrastructure. Some of them took time to actually embrace that part of their mandate. But today we can see a lot of efforts that are being done, a lot of effort to actually learn about their ecosystem and see how they can not come as repressive, but to be a force to push for more in terms of monitoring, regulation, and everything. Thank you.
That's a good point to pivot from. It's important for regulators to be an enabler for investment. Now, I saw some numbers that a Google search, a ChatGPT search takes 7 times the amount of power that a Google search does. And that speaks to the future in terms of digital infrastructure and integration. So it's no longer enough to have a digital backbone, it needs to be powered. I think the largest cost of the internet is power. So to be able to get a solid infrastructure in each of our countries, we need to spur and motivate investment. So Raymond, what is Ghana doing to encourage investment into digital infrastructure, both at the hyperscale and the underserved areas?
So one area of getting an infrastructure for digital use is investment. And the investment is not a small amount of money. So the government, through the regulator, is looking at how to implement policies to make investment easier to be made in these areas. That would make sure that we are able to leap and also benefit from the digital age. One area we have looked at is infrastructure sharing and open access. some years ago, each service provider has its own tower. So in one area, you see a multiple number of towers. Over time, regulatory made sure that there is tower sharing and co-location sharing. So then all of a sudden, a licensed operator may not need to invest in towers, but rather can share with others and pay some floor and tower space as he runs his service. Another area is same investment. How have we handled the 5G and the 4G investment in that area? In 2024, we licensed a wholesale 5G network operator. The aim is to make sure that this operator will invest in the 4G and 5G area, and then the other service providers can then share this infrastructure to leverage on it. And it was not just limited to mobile network operators, but then ISPs authorized by the NCA can also share that infrastructure. So these are some of the things Ghana is doing to make sure that we can bring the digital infrastructure home and have citizens benefit from it.
Interesting. Nigeria also has a very large population, and the mandate to universal coverage is even much more intense. What is the NCC's view on it? And perhaps you could comment around tax regimes, incentives, and opportunities for growth in terms of digital infrastructure.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me start with the tax regime, for example. That aims to, of course, encourage investment. Recently, there was a tax reform bill that was passed by our National Assembly. And that tax reform bill, in essence, has simplified taxation, has removed almost 56 different taxes and has consolidated some, has removed some from existence. So it's a clear indication by the government to encourage investors. And it will come into effect in January next year. And I'm sure a lot of the people who have invested currently and those coming will see the value and the need for them to take advantage of those. That said, the government is also, through various, of course, agencies apart from the NCC, promoting things like provision of power in rural areas. We have the Rural Electrification Board, for example, that those off-grid, mini-grid and off-grid power stations. And the government has also given a lot of licenses for providing power, and it's given power literally to state governments to provide their, generate their own power and distribute and sell. So those are all efforts aimed at stimulating the Nigerian economy, and it's also part of what we're doing at the Commission. We're also supportive, like I've mentioned, in terms of, for example, licensing. We also have the Universal Service Provision Fund, which has done a lot to contribute in its own way to internet penetration, installation of base stations, and even provision of fiber connectivity. And of course, in terms of policies and frameworks also, we're also pushing in that direction to help ensure that potential investors are safeguarded, and both for cybersecurity and other aspects. The Commission, in a few days' time, I think in 7 days' time or 6 days' time, on the 27th, we're going to hold a stakeholders forum with members of the industry. There's the communications industry on our new cybersecurity framework that we have developed already. So the draft document is ready, and we're going to share it and discuss it amongst us. And all that effort is to ensure that our investments are protected both financially and of course from the cybersecurity angle as well. We're also promoting a lot of activities such as implementation of DNSSEC and IPv6 and so on. So all those efforts are geared towards helping the industry to become stable, to become secure, and for investors to feel safe and confident in Nigeria, and also for users to feel safe and confident in the services that are rendered to them. Thank you.
Fiona, the scale that is needed for compute in Africa cannot sit in one country. If we're going to have a gigawatt data center, it needs to be shareable across the continent. Are we doing enough as individual countries and as a collective to motivate cross-border shared infrastructure?
I think, first of all, as African countries, our governments need to make a concerted effort and an intentional decision to address our cross-border challenges, being cognizant of the fact that these borders were not created by us. And if we can appreciate that, then we need to find a way of facilitating communication across the borders without it being a tedious and difficult process. There are countries where only the military can facilitate that cross-border communication. So you want to offer services across, you build until your border and then have the military pick it up and cross over. We need to get out of that. We need to be able to open up for private sector investors to also be able to roll out and negotiate amongst themselves on how they exchange and connect the capacity across the borders. If we do that, then we're able to fast track the cross-border infrastructure sharing. We're able to enable more of our citizens, our nationals, to access communication services, because in some areas you find that it is the cross-border connectivity that will address some of those universal service challenges of underserved areas. And so we need to figure out how we do this, and this can only be driven at the national level with intentional national agenda to have this happen. Because even if a country had the capacity to build, let's say, a data center with extremely high power demand, we need to be able to justify to the hyperscalers why that facility and how it will serve the region. We cannot give that justification when we've got border challenges in communication. We have to lift the barriers, and that has to be intentionally done by, sometimes I think presidential directive, but I don't know. I think the regulators have a role to play, because when you look at the different economic blocks, the regulators are able to agree within their regions. So if within the regions they can agree, and then those same regulators still come together under various regional bodies like the ATU, there is the Smart Africa. So there are different options where they can discuss and keep discussing until they come to an agreement and facilitate for private sector infrastructure sharing and crossing of boundaries.
Yeah, and I think it is possible and can be done. WIOCC takes pride in being the most successful joint venture. We were originally owned by 14 African shareholders. Some of them are regulators, and we were able to come together and deliver the easy submarine cable system. So there are opportunities for intergovernment collaboration, and our company is a success story.
They need to be as intentional, regulators need to be as intentional as they were when they were coming together to build the easy system.
Yes.
And that needs to continue.
So it's an interesting, so Cedrick, I don't know if there is any other success stories in terms of regulatory innovation. We were able to bring together these 14 African shareholders, and for a region that had no regulation around submarine cables at the time, there was opportunity for collaboration and invention. Are there any other strategies that we can look into as a continent to motivate cross-border infrastructure?
I think there is currently multiple initiatives that exist. One of them is from African Union, and it's about not only encouraging for the subsea submarine cables, but also to have those cross-border cables from north to south and east to west. It's there because they have those plans to make sure that not only we have roads, but also cables that actually go across Africa. But as Fiona said, we still have difficulties. We still have challenges. Again, I go back to my first point, 54 countries, 54 challenges. Yesterday, somebody mentioned collaboration. And not only it's difficult for people to collaborate at the country level, but it's even worse when it comes to cross-collaboration. We have some projects like the CAB project, Central Africa Backbone, where you have cables that are living from Gabon to Congo-Brazzaville, then from Cameroon to Congo and Central African Republic to Congo, and there is also interconnection between DRC and Congo. It has been facilitated by the project, sponsored and everything, so the regulation facilitate that one. I would say laying the cables was a success story. Now the question is, what are we doing once we have the infrastructure? Are we fully using them? So for me, if it comes to laying cables, I would say this is a success story. Now, the usage, it's another story.
Yeah, so I see we're running low on time. So maybe we can talk through the future. What does the future look like from the regulator's perspective? It is already, the vision has been cast. We need to build for the future. The AI clusters are going to come. What are we doing as individual countries to prepare for it?
So in the case of Ghana, whilst we are looking to attract the right investment, also make the barrier of investment low by enacting licenses that will make sure that the infrastructure for big data already exists, 4G, 5G exists before license operators come in, or those operating also benefit from it. We are also looking at the unserved and the underserved areas, because we need to carry everybody along. It can't be that people in regional capitals are the only ones being carried, the unserved and the underserved areas. So we are looking at how we can expand the Ghana Investment Fund for electronic communication, so that we can have others, we can have investment in those areas so that we can carry them along. Another area we are also looking at is making sure that in the area of sharing infrastructure, we can incentivize operators to go to areas where the commercial value may not exist now. The place may be populated, but then we do not have, the people there do not have the purchasing power. Also, government is looking at how it can collaborate with service providers to make sure that service is available. Data is not expensive, it's affordable, and the citizen can benefit from it. Because if we talk of all these big things and the citizens that benefit from it are so few, definitely it will not impact on their productivity that can then accelerate development for West African countries. So we are looking at that. And recently, through the ministry, government is able to work with service providers to see how they can make services affordable. One area is to look at how they can maintain probably the price same, but then gain more data. And they successfully were able to work between 10 to 15% of data, but more data bundles in that area. So these are some of the things we are doing. We are also looking to attract more fiber landings into the country because competition can also drive prices down. So we expect to Africa to land. We expect that your pricing will be better and that can drive pricing. There are many things that affect pricing, but we know that competition is one of the areas we can look at to drive prices down.
Thank you. For Nigeria, I can say the future looks bright. As an example, and 2 months ago or so, MTN Nigeria launched the Dabengwa Data Center, which is the largest in West Africa. And down the line, a few weeks back, we were having conversation with Airtel, and they said that will only last for a few months because their own data center is coming up and is going to be larger than that. So, it's an example of what the future looks like. But notwithstanding, I think the future is for government, private sector collaboration. It's an example. There are things the private sector can do, but government must facilitate. For example, the issue of power. Everybody knows the requirement of power you've mentioned in the case of AI, for example, the massive amount of power that is required. And globally, places like Europe are building AI gigafactories, and it should also be part of our agenda in Africa, like Dr. Fiona has said. Government must look at that in totality between governments to build infrastructure that will facilitate that. Cross-border is another major area. We've been battling with the trans-Saharan fiber optic cable, and some of the things that we have proposed as a commission, of course, is not to lay brand new fiber, but to bring consortium, form a consortium with people who already have existing fiber, and then just look at the spots where there are gaps and fill those ones. And that is all the model that the Honorable Minister is pursuing at the moment. If you even look at the Project Bridge, it's all a PPP arrangement. Government will have maximum 49%, and the private sector will have the controlling share. And this is the way to go in the future. So the future is bright. We have the potentials. We have the exchanges, internet exchanges. We have 3 or 4 that are carrier neutral. We have data centers that are carrier neutral. We have submarine cables, a lot of them, a lot of capacity. But for in the future, we need to scale up some of our terrestrial routes. We need to also develop skills, especially in AI, the language models, the compute powers, and things like that. So those are aspects that government will have to come in and support the private sector. Thank you.
From where I sit, I think the future for Africa is extremely bright because we have a generation that is for a while going to be the youngest generation globally that is driving technology advancement. We have a generation that has been born with exposure to tech. Today we've got 10, 11, 12-year-olds who already know how to bypass systems and apps, and they're doing it very effectively. We've got, when you look at the case of Kenya and the Gen Z demonstrations, we've got these kids in the streets and they don't need a GSMA line to communicate. They've developed their own apps and they're doing it effectively. So that means that the traditional regulatory models have to change because the tech is already running way, 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 way ahead. When you look at what these youth are able to do, and if you get to spend time with them, we realize that these are minds that have seen the sky is the limit. There is nothing stopping them, and they don't need to get out of their houses. They're doing everything from the comfort of their homes. Now, with that bright future, I think the governments of Africa need to decide on whether to embrace these young minds, support them, ride with them, guide them. If you try to police them, it's not going to work because they are on a space that is considered a free space. The internet was never built with those kind of restrictions. They are able to collaborate across the world and do so much more. So how do we embrace that to be able to step boldly into the future, to be able to work with them and to support them? And I think we need to also look at our policies and make sure that we recognize today ICT as critical infrastructure, as a utility, so that then we're not thinking of disconnecting, shutting down. No one wakes up in the morning as a government and says you want to turn off the water. You know, water is life. And that's the same way internet now has become very basic to our lives. So we need to stop thinking in terms of shutting down the internet. We need to think of being able to deal with individual issues and culprits and criminals online on an individual basis. You can no longer holistically deal with people because then you shut off the internet, you will kill someone in an operating table who's been supported by telemedicine. You will turn off the banking system, the ATMs will not work. It has become a way of life and very critical to our activities. We need to make sure that we now look at our economies in terms of digital economies and the impact of a digital economy and what that means, because then there is a need to reach out to make sure that the universal service access is not just basic connectivity, but it is tangible connectivity that can facilitate meaningful engagement and communication, as well as stability of the communication. We need to look at our national broadband strategies. We need to develop national AI strategies. We need to look at the historical way we have looked at the communication sector and change our mindsets so that we are looking at it from a different lens and not the traditional lens we have had. When we do this, then we set up Africa to be the place where the hyperscalers now must come into, whether they like it or not. And if they don't come in, we will have our own hyperscalers developing from our midst.
Cedrick?
Along the line of my fellow panelists, I would say that the future of Africa looks bright as well, because not only that we have some initiatives not only at the public level, so governments working together, but we also have some private sector initiatives that are there that are pushing for cross collaboration. It's true that you have currently some cables you have some companies, some businesses in West Africa that have cables across countries working very well. And this is only possible because now there is a better understanding. And I would say that it's very amazing it's very awesome to see that government have decided to really take it into them and not stay up there, but come closer to their ecosystem. I really like what is being done in Ghana, in Nigeria, in so many countries where there is in the understanding of what is needed and what can be done at a government level. So there is a lot that is being done at that level, but also we have technical communities, very diverse technical communities that are there and that are also pushing. And what is interesting with those technical communities is that it's not tech people only, but you will see government people, regulators coming and helping. And I would say there is a lot to be done, and it's true that one of the challenge that we have is still sometimes turnover in key position, but even that we have been able to bridge that gap by having key people there to support and pushing. And for me, I would say the future of Africa looks bright, because when I look at a conference like this one, you have so many people coming, meaning that it's interesting. 15 years ago, the room was only tech peoples. But today we have representatives from the government, we have regulators that are coming, we have businesses, we have so many people. I mean, it shows that there is an interest for Africa to move forward.
Thank you, Cedrick. Do we have time for questions? Okay. So I'll put to the audience if you've got any questions. And perhaps this time, maybe switch it up and put it as a question to the audience. What barriers are you facing in your market right now that regulation can solve?
Maybe you direct them to the
Oh yes,
mic.
sorry.
Yeah.
If you have a question, you need to come to the mic right in the middle.
There's a microphone behind the lady there. Yeah.
I hope I can be heard. I don't think if I'm answering your question, but I have a few questions to ask. Thank you so much for this conversation. My name is Ayan Khalif. I am from Mogadishu, Somalia. I'm also part of the 2025 Peering Fellows. I have a question, and it can go to any of the panelists. I think the conversation was mostly about frameworks in Africa, and when usually we are having such conversations, we usually tend to go on building frameworks, coming up with harmonized frameworks in Africa without focusing on the existing frameworks. So my question is, how effective are the already existing frameworks in Africa? To what percentage are they really effective? And how can different countries, while still focusing on harmonization, how can they practice their independent sovereignty while still trying to work on unity across Africa? My other question is, how effective are the existing frameworks, and are they really sort of like donor agenda responsive, or are they built on African centered agendas? Thank you.
Raymond, do you want to take that?
Well, I can talk about an initiative, ECOWAS roaming, between Ghana, Ivory Coast, Ghana, Benin, Ghana, Togo. And it's been working very well. The aim is to remove the roaming charges. It ensures that when a Ghanaian moves into say, Togo, where we have a bilateral roaming agreement, which was led by the ministers of ICT in the ECOWAS region, is able to pay the local charges without adding on the roaming charges. And this has worked effectively well. But then I recognize that there are areas that we need improvement. I think Dr. brought these up, cross-border collaborations among African countries. making sure that we can share data centers, we can share internet exchange points, are areas we will need to definitely, governments need to make effort, regulators need to make effort to improve if we are to leverage on this infrastructure to make sure that we achieve more in the digital era.
Well, if I can add to that, I think it's a very good question. She's right, there are lots of frameworks and agreements and stuff. But if you look at it, this is where the regional bodies come in, bodies like WATRA, like the AU, like the ECOWAS and the rest. So absolutely there's need for more cooperation, not more frameworks, because she's right, we have existing framework. I mentioned the Trans-Saharan route for fiber. We had some other arrangements with Niger, I know, but all these ones, there is part of for government and there's also part for the private sector. Like you know, the private sector is driven by, of course, the numbers behind this. But for government, if she's right, we need to make more effort. We need to have more collaboration. And I'm happy Smart Africa, for example, has been doing a lot of work in that regard as far as collaboration within Africa is concerned. We have 2 or 3 councils. We have the Council of Regulators. We have Council of ICT Ministers. We have some other councils that are working assiduously to see that our agendas have been pushed not just within our countries but across Africa. And what we need is the coordinating bodies like Smart Africa and the rest. Thank you.
I think I'd like to add to it and just respond by saying last year, Somali joined the East African Communication Organization, that is the regional body, where the ministries of ICT, the regulators and service providers meet to address issues of policy and frameworks harmonization. So we are in the process of working with them through the harmonization process because they've come a bit late into the organization. And so I believe that we should have a report on the progress of that. I would be happy to share with the lady after this. I don't have my numbers where I'm sitting now, but I can share with you insights and also give you a contact of who we are working with within the Somali Regulatory Agency. Thank you.
On my side, I would say there is a lot of initiative. I will confirm that there is a lot of initiatives, and it's actually great to see that at sub-regional levels, people or government and regulators are working together to make sure that they harmonize and facilitate communication. Because there is that initiative that has been shared regarding the removing roaming charges between Benin, Benin, Ghana. I know that there is also one that exists when it comes to SADC with CRASA. They are working on that. So meaning that there are more and more frameworks that are being established. And what is really beautiful is that it's no longer imported. It's not a copy-paste from what is done outside. It's something that is contextual, that is adapted to the context, to our context and our realities. Thank you.
Is that a question?
Yeah, there is a question from one of the participants online. Brian Longway is asking, on data sovereignty, are we ready as Africa? 1,000 AI GPUs cost about $300 million USD, and that's minus supporting racks, cooling, and power infrastructure. Sovereign AI investment is in the range of $500 million for a single AI-enabled data center. Are African governments ready to allocate such funding?
It's an interesting question. It's actually also the same question she asked. Are we building policy towards the dollar or towards what the people need? Raymond, your thoughts?
I think while the regulators are still thinking about that response as
Right.
private sector, let me chip in quickly and say that a lot of our governments are not able to do this on their own. However, many are looking for strategic public-private partnerships and finding ways to do this through those partnerships. The international Bretton Woods institutions have come through and are putting forward proposals to do this. There is effort by the European Union. I think we do have a representative attending this AfPIF, and they can actually explain more details. They have a program where around digital infrastructure development that is looking into areas such as this, and they could be able to support. So there are various programs being run that some are governmental, some are private sector driven, others are PPPs that give an opportunity for us to be able to work on such deployments and investments.
Well, for us as regulators, what we try to do is, of course, to push the agenda to government. We don't actually dictate what fund is allocated to what. But what we do, how we help is that we push the agenda to government. And like she rightly said, we work also with the DFIs, with other agencies and other governments, both foreign and private individuals, to make sure that the requirements that are needed are at the forefront. So as an example is, we're currently working with the EU on crowdsourcing projects that we want to get data from users in an effort to improve quality of experience and so on. So similarly, the cybersecurity framework that we're developing, we worked in conjunction with the World Bank. So there are efforts going on. We also help in policy development, for example, the AI strategy and so on and so forth. So the effort for us, I think government is trying, but yes, there is need for government to also focus, even though we know there are lots of challenges apart from the technological challenges. There are also a lot of infrastructural challenges in terms of roads, in terms of security, and so on. The government is more concerned in, so to say, but effort is also being made from our own angle to push those other requirements as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have one last one. Okay.
Bonjour tout le monde.
Ce n'est pas français.
Can we have translation kits?
Can someone please get the presenters the headset, please?
Can we take the other question before that?
So maybe we can take the other question while we set up. It's okay?
Okay, maybe you listen to the question and let us know, right? Okay. Okay.
Hello. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
C'est bon, la traduction? Je peux parler, c'est bon? Ok. En tout cas, merci. Depuis ce matin, nous étions en train de parler d'infrastructures, de connectivité. Nous qui sommes les pays enclavés, je pense que quelque part, nous avons beaucoup de difficultés en lien avec la connectivité, ou surtout au niveau des infrastructures. La question que j'aimerais poser aujourd'hui à vous qui êtes pays qui sont directement connectés à la mer, pourquoi avec tout ce qui a été pris comme dispositif au niveau de l'international pour, en tout cas, diminuer les charges en lien avec le transit international, nous nous retrouvons souvent avec des coûts exorbitants, ce qui fait qu'il y a des répercussions sur également les coûts au niveau national, ce qui fait que quelque part aussi, ça réduit un peu le développement de l'infrastructure au niveau local. Pour la présentatrice du Kenya également, j'ai vu qu'elle a parlé aussi beaucoup
Juste un instant, le temps que qu'ils mettent leur casque.
Ok.
So sorry, we're having a challenge with the.
Si tu peux
So maybe he
répéter.
can go first, and then we can get the question after. So sorry about that.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I don't know, maybe we have, my name is Oladi Ladidoyin. I'm actually from Liquid Intelligent Technology. My question is this, what measure are we putting in place for fiber cuts across the coast of Africa as a whole? Do we have infrastructure protection policy that will mitigate against such damages that will cause significant impact business losses? We've seen if you notice sometime last year, we've had this kind of attack. We've had series of fiber cuts. I don't know, maybe we'll have such policies in place, not just only in Nigeria, that will cut across the entire coast of Africa. So that's just my question. Thank you.
Okay, so in the Ghana case, after that experience, a mandate was sent to service providers and specifically MNOs and who are sourcing from upstream providers to ensure that the resiliency they add a next level of resiliency to the fiber they have. So if they have two fiber cables they are buying, for instance, from ACE and say SAF3, they must add a third one, but that is not lighted, but they must make sure that they have an agreement where if fiber is cut, they can light the third one within 24 hours. Also, they need to have an arrangement for terrestrial fiber across border to neighboring countries to pick up internet services from there. Also, should terrestrial fiber go down, they must have enough frequency resource to build appreciable bandwidth over wireless. And during the incident, NCA was able to allocate some frequency without charging to service providers to make sure that they can pick up internet traffic from other service providers. But this mandate stands, and our inspection shows that our MNOs have complied.
That's actually a very strong point. The level of fault tolerance for where we're headed in terms of AI compute and building infrastructure for AI is going to rely a lot on how well we can protect the infrastructure. Is that something that is at the top of mind for the NCC?
Yeah, it is. To address some of his questions, just like my colleague from Ghana has said, of course, resiliency and redundancy are key aspects of what we're considering in the NCC. And from our own point of view, we've also worked with the Association of Cable Operators of Nigeria. We had some meetings with them. We've arranged meetings with the Nigerian Ports Authority, and all with the objective of mapping the corridors where submarine cables are, for example. And additionally, at the Commission, we're even going deeper into one of the key things we're doing now currently is, of course, renaming my own department. There is the New Media and Information Security. We're now going to rename that department, give it additional functions, which one of them, of course, is the internet infrastructure that looks specifically at internet infrastructure from, of course, the point of view of it being a critical national information infrastructure. So one of the key things that we're going to look at is that aspect of need for redundancy especially, and also working with government agencies and others to safeguard such critical infrastructure. So all those ones are being addressed from that point of view. And even from the the terrestrial networks, one thing that the Commission has also done in terms of working with governors, for example, on fiber that is already laid, is a known activity of the Commission, but there are other less known activities. For example, the Commission has provided subsidies in the recent past for the establishment of corrugated optical duct manufacturing in Nigeria. And the company is working as we speak to ensure that that has been achieved, and those kind of ducts will have a lot of sub-ducts, and they're more stronger, more reliable, and it's all an effort to ensure that we have a very secure infrastructure, especially the internet infrastructure. Thank you.
So we'll take the gentleman as the last question.
Merci. Comme je le disais tantôt, depuis ce matin, on est en train de parler d'infrastructures, de connectivité, etc. De connectivité, d'infrastructures. Donc, ce que je voulais poser comme question, j'ai une inquiétude. Je disais, nous qui sommes les pays enclavés, nous rendons compte que d'abord, le transit nous coûte cher. Nous nous rendons compte également quand il y a une coupure sur la fibre, nous sommes naturellement impactés. Ce qui fait qu'au sein de nos pays, on a beaucoup de difficultés, d'abord pour l'expansion de l'infrastructure et surtout les problèmes en lien avec la connectivité. Ne pensez-vous pas que nous, en tant que pays enclavés, souvent, notre dépendance de vous qui avez accès à la mer ne constitue pas un problème? Et comment est-ce que, dans ces genres de plateformes, on peut encourager vraiment à ce que des initiatives au niveau international qui sont prises pour permettre à ce que ces choses-là ne se répètent, mais malheureusement, on continue à subir toujours le dictat souvent des pays qui ont accès à la mer. L'autre question, c'est en lien également avec l'accès universel. Je pense que ça date de plusieurs années que les pays ont mis en œuvre ces stratégies d'accès universel, et nous nous rendons compte que c'est juste de nom, mais la plupart des pays africains n'ont pas utilisé l'accès universel pour le faire. Pourquoi ce fonds-là a été collecté? Moi, j'aimerais aussi savoir, au niveau du Kenya, j'ai vu qu'elle a fait beaucoup parler, quels sont des partages d'expériences que nous pouvons avoir par rapport à cette question d'accès universel, et si même il y a une documentation, quelque chose sur lequel on pourrait accéder, nous sommes preneurs. Merci.
Thank you. So I think
Okay, so I think his question is around being landlocked and having access to being dependent on countries who have shore. Like I mentioned, one of the things that we are supporting is, of course, the challenge is also on our own part as well, because like Nigeria, we have about 8 submarine cables at the shore, but the capacity is still lying almost 80% in that area, and we need to take it into the hinterland. And part of it is what we are doing to support, like I mentioned, the corrugated optical ducts that we looked at. And that is because we've seen the need to have that kind of duct that would be more reliable for our infrastructure. And it's also part of the mentions we've made about collaboration, cross-border, and it's an ongoing effort. I know the Universal Service Provision Fund in the past has supported a company in Nigeria to connect with another in Niger Republic at Dan Isa or somewhere near Katsina. So those are efforts I think that we need to revive. And it gives me an idea, even sitting here, is to see that we bring together the mobile operators, for example, from neighboring countries and let them talk just like we're talking here now. So in that kind of effort, we'll see how we can make sure that capacity has been distributed, which is also mostly going to be a commercial agreement, but then government needs to facilitate that, and these are things that we'll take to our management as one of the key things from this gathering. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think it's an ongoing conversation. As private sector, we're doing our part as well. As WIOCC, we've built over 55,000 kilometers of terrestrial fiber across the continent. It transits between various countries. We are working very closely with government and regulators to make that a success. We will continue building for as long as there's a demand, and landlocked countries still do need that level of access. And I think the conversation across the room is that we'll continue to collaborate to make this a success. So one word, closing remark, one word.
One word, I would say Africa is the future.
I will give my closing remark as I respond to the question on Kenya and the USF, and ask the gentleman probably to meet me outside. But what we have basically done is having the USF managed by the regulator and decided upon by the regulator, but with clear guidelines. There has to be a study that shows where the underserved areas are, and then the strategy is developed. Then once the strategy is developed, then our projects can be implemented based on the strategy, that strategic plan that was developed that needs to be covered. That's basically how we do it. And I think there are very many other countries that are doing it in different ways. Thank you.
Public-private partnership. I think that's my one word, if you can take it there.
Africa has the youngest and the largest population and the largest landmass. And my only one word is collaboration. If the governments collaborate very well, we'll make it.
Well, thank you all. Thank you so much. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you so much, Douglas and the panelists. All right, so